A woman who blew the whistle on sexual harassment at Fort Bragg's Delta Force just got arrested by the FBI for leaking classified information. And specifically, you had Courtney Williams, who worked for a special military unit at Fort Bragg from 2010 to 2016. She held top secret security clearance and was trained in handling sensitive information, and she's a source in the Fort Bragg Cartel, an investigative book about unsolved murders, drug trafficking, and other crimes at the base. Right, and an excerpt, including her accounts, was published in Politico, with Williams discussing her job overseeing valid but fictitious identity documents, passports, financial tools for people working undercover. And the book includes some details of that work alongside her accounts of harassment. And as far as that harassment, what Williams described as horrific. She said operators routinely came to her office to proposition her for sex. They discussed her breasts openly. They would drunkenly propose to her. And a commander once told her that she was only hired for her assets while gesturing at her chest. In one incident, she said that she was subjected to a dress code check where she was told to bend over so that supervisors could determine if her white pants were transparent enough to see her underwear. They're saying that she believes that check was conducted solely to humiliate her. And then when she filed a formal complaint, she said, "My life became a living hell." She faced retaliation and eventually agreed to a settlement. But then, as far as this arrest, you have the DOJ alleging that Williams mishandled classified information between 2022 and 2025 while communicating with a journalist. She spoke with the reporter for over 10 hours on the phone and exchanged more than 180 messages for the book and article. And the DOJ claims that she disclosed information related to her classified work. And they also allege that she sent messages to a third party expressing concern about how much classified information was being shared, writing that she was probably going to jail for life. And that then brings us to Seth Harp, the author of the book, who's condemning the FBI for going after his source. Right, Harp calling Williams a courageous whistleblower who exposed rampant gender discrimination and sexual harassment in the U.S. Army's Delta Force, saying unlike many of my sources, she was adamant that she be quoted by name and made no attempt to conceal her identity because her actions were entirely above board, legitimate, and admirable. And then he also claimed the DOJ's indictment is ridden with factual errors and lacks specifics about what confidential information she actually revealed, arguing that she was arrested, quote, not to protect such information from disclosure, but to retaliate against a woman who only sought to improve workplace conditions for female soldiers. And then he made an argument that's hard to argue with, saying, while the FBI was monitoring my phone and investigating Courtney on vague and weak charges, the perpetrators of half a dozen murders involving Fort Bragg soldiers involved in the drug trade have gone entirely unsolved, saying a real police agency would go after real criminals instead of engaging in this sort of penny anti-political theater. As far as FBI Director Kash Patel, he framed this as a deterrent, saying this case should serve as a message to any would-be leakers. We're working these cases and we're making arrests. This FBI will not tolerate those who seek to betray our country and put Americans in harm's way. And it's also important to remember that this comes in a broader context, right? Trump has been explicitly threatening to arrest reporters who publish classified military information. And specifically, and recently, you had him going after reporting that detailed the status of the pilots whose jet was shot down over Iran.
We have to find that leaker because that's a sick person. Probably didn't realize the extent of how bad it was. I can't imagine that the person did, but we're going to find out. It's national security, and the person that did the story will go to jail if he doesn't say. We think we'll be able to find it out because we're going to go to the media company that released it, and we're going to say, national security, give it up or go to jail.
Right, and in response to that, you had people like the executive director of the Night First Amendment Institute responding, saying President Trump's threat should be understood as an effort to intimidate the press and to prevent journalists from doing work the public needs them to do. But with all that, for now, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens with Williams. Her fate, it's uncertain, and there is a real question about classified information here. Williams had top secret clearance. She discussed aspects of her job with a journalist, and if she disclosed operationally sensitive material, that is a legitimate legal issue regardless of her reasons. And in the meantime, we also have to take in the full context. This is a woman who was sexually harassed at one of the most elite military units in the country. She filed a complaint, was retaliated against, she then settled, and then she told her story by name with no attempt to hide. She talked to a journalist about the discrimination she faced as part of his larger investigation into crimes at the base, including unsolved murders that have apparently not been prioritized. And so the FBI's response wasn't to solve those murders. It was to monitor the journalist's phone and arrest the woman who talked about being harassed. Meanwhile, you got a president that's threatening to jail reporters. You have an FBI director and administration making it clear that if you speak to a journalist about what happened to you and you ever held a clearance, they're probably going to come for you. All while, again, remember, with this situation, the people who actually committed actual murders at the base, they're apparently walking free.